Okay, welcome to lesson 7 of this rune class. Now, in the last lesson we talked about what Odin had to say about working with the runes in the Havamal and some of the different meanings that people have applied to those, and honestly in my practice I have come to agree with it as well. So in this lesson we're actually going to dive in and show some of the practical ways to start doing this in our everyday practice. Now, most people ask me, Drake, they keep talking about carving. Do I need a hammer and chisel or do I need a knife? No, you do not. You do not need a pocket knife. You do not need a hammer and chisel. And you do not need a special knife or utensil set aside specifically for rune work. I know a lot of people do that. I do not. I've never had any issues, and I know hundreds of magicians who do not, and they've never had any issues. That said, I also know plenty of rune workers who do so because they like the more sacred ceremonial feel of it, and that is perfectly okay if you so choose to. However, if you choose to, remember any of the writing implements you choose to use can be made specialized and sacred if you so wish. But for the focus of this class in this video, we're going to focus on just general everyday rune working without the sacred side, okay? Now, when it comes to actually writing the runes, Odin did talk about know how to write the runes or know how to carve the runes. What does that mean? Don't you just draw it? Well, in some ways you do. However, as we mentioned in that video, lines actually have to intersect. And before you go to write your runes, also consider how visible do you want them. Depending on how you want the rune to be utilized is going to change it. So I often in the background have a rune circle, which I should have put up for this video. But as you can see, the symbols on this dragon's eye seal behind me, they're visible. They're very visible, just as the rune circle runes were very visible in the other videos. But they're also decorative in some sense as well, so that makes sense that they would be very visible. So if you were to, for say example, use runes to decorate a frame around a window or a door or artwork in your home, that's something you're going to want very visible. It's decorative. You mean for it to be seen. Even if it has magical properties in it, you want it to be seen. However, there are things that you may only want to be seen close up, so you don't want them to necessarily be seen from far away. You want people to get more close to it and inspect it more directly before they can necessarily make it out. And sometimes you may not want it seen at all. So because of that, you want to actually consider your writing implement. And the three most common for modern rune work is going to be the Sharpie, the ink pen, and the pencil. Honestly, those are the most common. Now, you can use pure energy to draw a rune if you don't want it seen, and some people even make a invisible ink. I personally do not use invisible ink. If I want runes to be someplace and unseen, I make them energetically only with my wand or my staff or even my finger. I'll just trace the energy there. Another great option is blessed or charged water. You can actually trace it quickly there if you want an actual transference substance that will dry and in most cases not leave a mark. Though sometimes it'll leave finger smudges on the window. Be careful of that. Don't want your wife whooping you over smudges on the window. So now the downside to the pencil. Yes, this is going to be the hardest one to see. This is going to be the lightest one, the easiest one to hide. It also smudges and it can be erased and isn't going to last a while. Be aware of that. I do not like using pencil in my rune work, but some people do, so be aware of that. So my general go-to in most cases is going to be the Sharpie or the ink pen. Now, anytime I'm working in my journals and taking notes and I need finer scripts and I know I'm going to be reading it, so I'm going to be holding it here, I will go with the pen. It's just honestly easier in most cases. However, my personal favorite, hands down, is the Sharpie. And I'll go ahead and give you a quick show of why. we are going to go ahead and do 3 quick runes here on a piece of paper. We will do Fehu. And then in ink, I'm going to do Enzus. And then in Sharpie, we are going to do Wunyo. Okay? There you go. You can easily see that each of the mediums creates a different outlook on how easy it is to see. Now, my big reason for liking the Sharpie is when it comes to ritual work and bind runes and whatnots. I do make my own runes for rune magic and stuff, and I do tend to work in a low lit area most of the time, and I find the thick dark lines of a Sharpie is just so easy to see in low light conditions that I work in, and it's easier to maintain a trance. I don't have to overly focus my eyes. It just works better for me. Many people have no trouble with just the ink pen. So you can definitely use the one that you want to use. Now, of course, let's say you want to do a rune spell. Now we're going to start talking about bind runes here and rune spells. Now when it comes to rune spells, you have 3 main options here. We'll cover the 2 most common ones first. The first one is just your standard rune staff. Now this is literally a line of runes that can be written out 2 ways. And I'm going to utilize the same 3 runes here this time. And I'm going to continue to use my Sharpie so it'll show up well for the video camera. So directly under what we already wrote, let's go ahead and let's do a rune spell to help with some anxiety, okay? I know a lot of friends who deal with anxiety a lot in their life, and this is a rune spell that I often use to help them out. And I'm going to do it in 2 distinct ways, okay? Now the first one, which is a rune staff, as you can see, they're just straight in line. I have Enzus, which is dealing with the mind, because a lot of the anxiety that my friends deal with is a mental anxiety. And I have Wunyo right there beside it, connected straight to it, creating a singular symbol. Okay, now I can do the same exact spell. It says making just a talisman. I could easily put a small space between them. So now I'd have that. Both of those could easily work as a rune spell for helping deal with this anxiety. Now, again, the more runes you add to the staff, the more purpose. Every time you put a rune in there, you need to know what its purpose is. And while you're tracing it, you need to be focused on its purpose in this particular spell. If you're not focused on the intent and the reason for the rune being in there, you're not doing it right. And it will end up doing nothing, and it will mess it up. So you have to be focused and mindful when doing these. So, and you can flip them around however you want. So I'm going to give you a 3rd example of this same spell. And that is going to be, we are going to take Enzus. We're going to focus on the mental side of this and the mental health. And we're going to focus on the joy of Wunyo. Alright, there you go. Same spell again. This is actually more of a traditional bind rune method, and that's because you see here they're sharing this piece. Now here's the thing, when you draw this, you actually have to draw Fehu first, and when you draw Wunyo, you have to draw Wunyo completely. You have to retrace over the same line. Okay, you have to draw the total rune. There's no shortcuts. And again, you have to maintain the focus on what it is you're using the rune for. So if you were, for example, just to draw this symbol or this symbol out in hopes that it's going to work, it won't work because you didn't put the focus into it that was needed for a rune spell. That's why a lot of people find bind runes on the internet don't work for them. They don't know how it was created. They don't know why it was created. And therein lies your problem. And that's where the Havamal talks about things going wrong. You're using something that you're not entirely sure how it was built or how the energies are being directed, and things can go wrong. So it's very important that all the lines of every rune are in there included. You miss no lines, and your focus for each rune is there while you're drawing it. That is very, very important. Now, let's say I wanted to do a bind rune to help with stress and anxiety, okay? So I like urus when I'm dealing with physical things, and stress to me is a very physical thing, more often than not. So I'm going to go ahead and put urus in this one. We're going to focus on physical stress with that, physical sensations of anxiety, and then I am going to come in. I'm going to add in Anzus for the mental stress and mental anxiety as well. I'm going to retrace the line for Anzu's back piece because it's shared with urus. Okay, and then finally, I want that joy, I want that hope, I want that peace that Wunyo is so well known for. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in here as well. Go ahead and trace that over again. Make sure I get every line of Wunyo in there. And now I end up with this. A bind rune that can help me with stress and anxiety easily. And that's only one way you can piece those 3 runes together. And real quick, just in case you have forgotten, because I know we went over these runes earlier in the course and some of you may have forgotten, there is the bind rune we created for stress and anxiety using 3 runes, drawing all the lines for all 3 runes, not skipping any, keeping our focus on why we chose each rune and how we put them together to create the bind rune. Okay? So now we've discussed some of the simple basics of how to create a bind rune and how to put your focus in it. Now, as you're putting your focus into it and you're drawing into it, you're putting energy into it. It will work. And at that point, you can even activate it like a sigil or use it in a spell. Easy. In any way that you choose to use a sigil, you could use a bind rune in this method. You can also do a hailing ritual to call on Odin, to have Odin help you empower this bind rune for your goals. And that is okay as well. Some people will even take and they'll use their spit to empower it. So you can spit in your hand and smack it down on there, or you can just lick your fingers and wipe it across the rune. That is fine. Some people will even use blood. They'll take like a diabetic lancet or just get a little drop of blood to put on there. That's okay if that's what you want to do. More often than not, I find people prefer to use spit. It's just easier. No diabetic lancets or nothing like that needed. And then there are rune staves that are encoded. So let me show you what those would look like. These are usually done on a sun cross or an equal armed cross that's called many things. But basically it's this. Now, some of them will have more than 4 arms, but you're generally going to have something like that. So, and what you do is every rune in every et will have a code. The most common code I've seen is the et is on the left, the rune is on the right. So, for example, for Fehu, it would end up looking like that. 1 and 1. Because it's et 1. It is et 1, rune 1. Okay? Alright, so on this staff, let's do the rune Isa now. Which rune Isa is actually in et 2. It's in the second et. And it is the third rune in that et. So it would actually be encoded and hidden on the staff in thusly. You see on the left you have the 2 representing the et, and then on the right you have the position in the et, which is the 3rd position, to encode it. Now you can do these however you want. Some people even create curves on them. So for example, Anzu's would be 1, 3. So if you're making it in a curved manner, it would look something like that. So this is an artistic way to create great images and sigils for your workings that you've encoded in some way. Some rune workers who are familiar with this type of rune staff might be able to figure out your code if you use it as strict as this. But there are people who also do play around with different encodings of it in different ways. Every rune master has their own. This honestly is probably one of my favorite and the simplest to use, and it can truly make some really beautiful runes for spell work. So for example, real fast, let's go with the spell that we recently just did here. Let me fold my paper over here. And we did a bind rune for mental and physical stress and anxiety. Okay, well, that's easy enough. So we'll go ahead and get this on there. And we had Uruz on there for the physical pain, or the physical stress and the physical anxiety. Okay, and we had Anzu's on there for the mental stress and anxiety. So we want to make sure that's on there. Now on this particular one, I'm actually going to reverse them because we're just, like I said, you're using the code however you want to use it. And then of course we have Wunyo. And Wunyo is the 8th rune in the first et. So you can easily do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1. And now you would have a staff built off of the bind rune that we did earlier that also represents the exact same rune magic power, and this is only one way of encoding them. Now some people I have seen, they will actually on the 5th line they will draw it down through like you would if you was using tally marks. It's not bad, it looks pretty good too a lot of times. Or some people will do 4 lines and then they'll start ticking the end of it, just teeing the end of it. Here, let me show you. So we'll go ahead and use the same one. I'll just put this on the end. So once they hit the 4th line, they'll cross through it. So let's say we're going to the 5th position in the rune staff. See, I got the 4 lines, and then the first line I started with has that line through it. They will do something like that to denote that we're halfway through the staff, we're starting the second half of the staff. So the 8th one would have that little tick mark through all of them. This is one of those where you get to exercise your creativity and play with this, and you can even work in different shapes and other things into these, and it can be a lot of fun. They are great for doing protection, warding, and whatnot. I love bind runes when it comes to protections, wards, and the likes around my house. I definitely love the decorative staves because most people don't recognize them for what they are. They just see little pinwheel style artwork, and you can place them in so many places. And when you're using those straight lines, especially on the cross-armed ones, you find that they can actually be carved real easy in wood if you want. They can also be painted very, very easily in decorative locations, things like that. And you don't have to use 4. There's a lot of people who use 8 arm they'll put it on 8 arms and the like. You can also do that. Just use your creativity when it comes to this and play around with it. Find your own encryptions even, utilizing these simple rules as you're writing it and following the rules that was laid out in the last lesson. Make sure anytime you're working with a rune, even if it's an encryption, your focus is on the rune, why you are adding it, and that you're not missing anything. Now, when you are doing your encryptions, picture the rune in your mind, the rune that you're encrypting. Picture it so that every line that's part of your encryption makes up that rune in some way. Okay? This is a powerful way to get started in your rune magic, and it is so very simple when it comes to it. This right here, this simple version of rune magic can get you to go so far in rune magic. And really, most rune workers can work with this simple and basic system and really flesh it out and go as far as they want. There's not a spell working in some way that you can't do here. So between this and what's called Galdr, there's not a lot the rune worker can't do and on the fly. And Galdr, as we've mentioned in this class before, I'm pretty sure, is where you speak the runes, you intone the runes. So this is a form of verbal spell casting. Now, we've talked about how you would write the runes, how you're going to do a bind rune, how you're going to do a rune staff. And this is great for doing spells that you want carved on something, or something that you're going to put into a talisman and give away, or maybe you're going to enchant an item like this behind you or protect your house. Galdr is great for, you need magic, you need it now, you need it quick, you need those vibrations, you need them punching. Maybe you don't need a physical manifestation of it. You need that energy clicking and popping right now. I love Galdr for this. And Galdr is literally the intoning of the rune. And I'll admit, one of the reasons I chose Uruz as one of the runes that I used for the bind rune is one of the most used Galdrs for me, especially over the last year, is Uruz. Uruz deals with physical health and vitality. And you can Galdr or the name of Uruz and focus on Uruz. You want to see it in your mind as you intone it and focus it on and feel those vibrations in you as you Galdr it and get those vibrations. They will start to heal you. I had the flu for a week once and could not get rid of it. I Galdred Uruz 9 times, and honestly, an hour later, I felt better. It was crazy. So since then, I've used Uruz anytime I've felt like I was under the weather to basically kick it and keep going. Now again, as always, disclaimer, this is not a replacement for medical attention or medical assistance or a proper doctor. But it is very helpful. So an example of how you would do this. You do want to intone it. Let me get a drink of water here because my mouth is a little parched from talking. And you want to try and do it 9 times. So I'm going to go ahead and do a full demo and give you all 9 of the Uruz Galdrs. And again, this one is for one I use for physical health. But you can utilize these in any spell that has a relationship to the abilities of the runes that you have learned. Remember that. So it'd be Ooh. Okay, so there you see, I've done the Galdr 9 times. Now, when you're doing these, you're taking in a full breath into your diaphragm and you're intoning it out slowly and controlled. And it's going to create a vibration. It is going to vibrate, and you will feel the vibrations throughout your body, and it is exhilarating. Now, another thing, I know a lot of guys and gals I know, because many of you know I work with military members quite a bit. They like to use urus for the PRT, that whole vitality, that physical strength, that endurance side of urus. They'll use urus to do a quick Galdring before they go take their PRT to give them that extra edge in getting their numbers up and getting through it. And also a great way to recover from workouts. So all you need to do is get your rune journal, which I'm sure you've been keeping your rune journal like we said, and flip to a rune and find out what its abilities are, what the notations that you have on it are. So, if you're seeking justice in a matter, you can easily use rune magic for justice with Tiwaz. You can also help it to balance. A lot of people have issues with grounding and balancing their energy out. Tiwaz is an amazing rune to Galdr for balancing one's own energy. Another great rune that I like to use quite a bit is if I have a need that's popped up and I need to try and find a quick resolution to it, or I'm facing some form of an ordeal. I love to use Nadiz to Galdr and get that energy out, because when you're doing a Galdr, you're speaking the energy directly, immediately. So it's a very, very fast punch straight to the issue at hand. So daily Galdring is a great way to do daily spell work to help you reach your goals. Whereas carving or writing or creating a sigil is a way that you can create a singular focus, something that you can easily give away, maybe place under a pillow. It's more passive. It'll hold its energy longer for one single working. Usually I'd say a bind rune solid for a couple weeks to a month, easy. And then of course they can be recharged. However, if I have a real issue and I'm really wanting to throw some rune magic at it, I'll create a bind rune for the issue at hand, and I will hold that and utilize it while I also do a Galdring. Now, if you wanted to do a group Galdring for a bind rune, or if there's a single rune that can represent the same thing, you could use the single. But one of the things I like to do with the bind runes, so I would actually Galdr each of the individual runes in the bind rune to help further empower it and go ahead and project that energy out through Galdr. So for the bind rune we done earlier with Uruz, Anzus, and Wunyo, that I'm only going to do one of the repetitions this time instead of all 9. The video is already running long. It would be Uruz, Anzus, and that would be one Galdring repetition of a bind rune. And this is how you do spoken rune spells. So go ahead, make you some bind runes, do some practices, get some work with the bind runes. Create 1 or 2 bind runes at least before the next lesson, and get them active in your life. Get them helping you bring what you want in your life. And definitely over the next week, practice your Galdr, work on your intoning, work on feeling the vibrations through your body. Just the sheer intoning will start to cause a vibration in your body. That vibration will create the energy, will immediately start causing change. You will see some of the fastest changes in manifestation through Galdr magic that you have seen in your practice in most cases. All right? I hope you're enjoying this. I hope you have a lot of fun working with the bind runes as well as Galdr magic. And I'll see you in the next lesson. Take care. Bye-bye.